Well, the WNBA has helped lead a great surge in interest around women's sports in the last few years. But recent comments by WNBA player Angel Reese have some worried about what might lie ahead. She called for players in that league to, quote, get what they are worth, end quote. And while that may be great for the players, there are still financial concerns around that league and women's sports as we move forward. Eric Bradlow is professor and chair of the marketing department here at the Wharton School, also co-host of the Moneyball podcast, which you can listen to wherever you get your podcast from. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Dan, it's great to be with you, and it's great to talk about sports and, of course, the intersection of that with business.
All right. So the comments by Angel Reese drew a lot of attention. I don't think there are many people out there that won't agree that players should get what they're worth. But it is a unique dynamic right now in how women's sports are burgeoning. We know the contracts for the WNBA are smaller than what they would probably want, but that was a collectively bargained agreement a few years ago, and the expectation is that those contracts will go up in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, the question is, and I agree with Angel Reese's comments in general, I think the question is, where is the increased value for, let's say, WNBA players going to come from? And what I mean by that is, are they going to come necessarily from the contracts from ownership? That's not obvious to me. But you're now seeing a more greater marketing. I'm putting on my Wharton marketing hat. You're seeing the marketing more of their players. So you're seeing sponsorship agreements. You're seeing, advertising agreements with WNBA players. You watch television now. You look at social media. WNBA players are now valued assets. So I look at each individual. If I were a player in the WNBA, I'd say, look, there's my contract value. In the short run, that's unlikely to be the biggest part of my revenue. Then there's marketing me, the individual, and my brand in the same way that NIL are doing that at the college level. WNBA players are going to do that at the professional level. And then there's the third part, which is them as an asset, whether it's as a speaker, whether it's them building their companies or joining boards of companies that want them. So I view it as like same way I do as a professor, Dan. I have a total revenue pool. Some's going to come from Wharton. Some's going to come from other places. I'll be honest, what I care about is that total package. And I think the WNBA players, in the short run at least, are going to have to think that way as well.
But when you look at the league, and the various reports said that the WNBA lost, was in the red this past year. I think it was, $40 million that they lost last year. So that becomes the other side of the challenge of trying to give the players what they want, but still having this as an entity that's profitable or close to profitable because there is that support from the NBA.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I always think about the profitability numbers of whether it's the NBA or the WNBA. I don't put that much, and no pun intended, stock in that. I really don't. Because it's not about, I'm not talking about any kind of hiding the real numbers or anything like that, but what they consider costs, how much revenue they allocate to their profit numbers. I don't know that that's as straightforward as like when you and I fill out our taxes. I don't think it works that way. Plus, if they have a growing league, we both agree it's a burgeoning league. We agree that, which means the value of the asset will increase over time. So I don't spend other people's money. Can the WNBA afford $40 million? Let's say that's the number plus losses for the next 10 years. Maybe so if their owners gain, if their assets double in value. But you're asking a great question. If the WNBA becomes a non-viable business model, then it's like what I always describe for myself, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will resonate with that. If I'm not a professor at Wharton, because Wharton goes out of business because it's an unviable business model, then those other revenue sources I have aren't as attractive. I'm not as attractive to them. And I think the WNBA needs to think about that. And I think the players need to think about that too.
Where do you think then we are in this women's sports revolution with obviously the success that the WNBA is having, but also the NWSL and obviously in college athletics, we're seeing it play out as well. Where are we in that process? Because, look, a lot of this is still very young in terms of if you compare how professional sports on the men's side grew out.
Yeah, look, I think the number one source, the thing that generates, as you know, Dan, very well, the most revenue is generated by media. It's media rights generate the most revenue. So now the question is, what are the ratings? How many eyeballs, both through, let's call it linear TV, social media impressions, etc.? Because, this is the way I always describe it. People like, you and I get to watch WNBA for free. Great. Yeah. But advertisers don't get to advertise for free. Right. So the more eyeballs of people with disposable income they hit, that's going to be the long run driver, at least in the next, I think, 5 to 10 years. That's still going to be the primary revenue source. So now the question is, how do you grow that pipeline? And look, it's going to be the same way it is. Look, I'm old enough to remember when nobody watched soccer in the United States. And then all of a sudden, soccer became bigger and bigger. And now that's a viable entity. Well, I think women's sports are going to be the same way. Look, I'll even say for myself, a diehard sports fan, which you know, I've watched more women's sports and really enjoyed it in the last 2 years than I did in the first 40 years of viewing in my life. And part of that is due to what's going on the Olympic teams. Part of it is the Caitlin Clark effect. Right. Part of it is what they've done to repackage the brand. But I think I'm not the exception anymore. I think I'm the norm.
So you're very optimistic about where this is all headed in the next decade or two.
Well, yes, and the reason is because, to me, I'm since I can't really personally identify, I'm the father of 3 sons, but I can say if I was the father of 3 daughters, I would have them participating in sports. I would have them engaged in sports the same way I am as the father of 3 sons. And I think you're seeing a lot more of that. And it's not just women, girls or not. My sons watch women's athletics now. And so I think you're going to see that happening. And I'm very, very optimistic. Now, will it reach the level of men's? Not in the short term. And I don't think, by the way, that's a realistic expectation, nor do I think salaries reaching the same level are there as well. But I think the top level female athletes, because of the brand value they bring to companies and the way they're branding themselves now, I think they're extraordinarily marketable assets.
Well, as a dad of 2 girls and a boy, you know that. I have had more fun watching my girls play sports over the last decade or so than I had in a long time. So I'm right there with you, and I'm really excited to see how this all plays out in the future.
Me too. And again, as I said, do not think about the income as just the part that your day job is paying you. Look, at the end of the day, I'm putting on my marketing hat again. Your day job as an athlete is to build your brand for the long run. That includes the pay you get from your day job, marketing opportunities, sponsorship opportunities, etc. And the great news for all of us and for society is that women athletes are getting greater and greater opportunities to build their brand.
Eric, always great to chat with you. Thank you, sir.
It's great to be with you, Dan.
Thank you. Eric Bradlow, Wharton marketing professor and chair of the department, as well as co-host of the Moneyball podcast.